Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Macon-Bibb County Committee, the whole meeting. Today is Tuesday, July the 9th, and everybody's chattering today. So at this time, we officially call this meeting to order. Our first order of business this morning is the approval of the minutes. This is the approval of the minutes from May the 14th, 2024 Committee of the whole meeting. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson, who is here on time. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you very much. We have a couple of presentations today and one vote, and we do have a need to go into executive session. This time, I'd like to call up Mr. Jake Hall. He'll be doing a presentation on United to End Homelessness presentation, and he'll give that through a PowerPoint as well, so pay close attention to that. This was asked by one of our commissioners who is not here today, so hopefully he is watching online. So at this time, yes, I didn't say his name. So at this time, we'll hear from Mr. Jake Hall, and thank you for being here today. And the floor is yours, and please speak into the microphone. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's Reverend Jake Hall.
Okay.
So I'll be presenting today about a framework to affect homelessness in Macon-Bibb. This is definitely first from a 50,000-foot perspective, and it engages more than just Macon-Bibb County resources and includes the actions and responsibilities of so many of our nonprofits. And so as we move through some of the strategic work that has happened, know that it represents a collective and an effort across our community to affect homelessness, to analyze what has worked and is working, and also to set some metrics by which we can further address homelessness in our region. Good day. I think when we talk about homelessness, it's important for us to define some terms at the outset. When we look at the scope of housing insecurity, we're not just talking about someone on Poplar Street pushing a shopping cart. We're talking about families who are in an imminent risk of losing the safe and stable housing they have. We're talking about folks in the school system who need McKinney-Vento assistance because they're doubled up, because they're living in hotels and motels, and they are precariously housed. We're talking about people who are literally homeless, who do not have safe habitation, who are living in makeshift shelters, living in tents, or squatting. And we're also talking about people who are fleeing domestic violence. And so over the scope of homelessness in our region, we need to keep those things in mind. Morning, Commissioner. Specifically, when we think about people who are unsheltered and at imminent risk of losing safe housing, we're talking about basically 4 demographics or different types of unsheltered persons. We have chronic individuals who have experienced bouts of homelessness throughout their life and have difficulty maintaining safe and stable housing without assistance. We have families, many of whom are experiencing homelessness for the first time. We have youth who have been displaced from their families of origins for many reasons, oftentimes because of violence or neglect. And we have veterans, too many veterans out there who have served our country, and now we need to make good on the promise of care that we offer to them. Each and every community is dealing with homelessness in and with and through these designations. Our approach to addressing homelessness has to be a systemic one. This is not a linear problem by which there are homeless people, and if you add a house, then you reduce the amount of homelessness in your community forever. Homelessness is a complex web of issues related to personal security and housing security. Everyone needs housing supports, things that reinforce the safety and security of their lives. And many of the programs that you'll be voting on later in this session deal with just this, keeping people stable and in their homes. And the good work of our Economic and Community Development Department, the good work of Home First and others do just that. Rebuilding Macon, all of these programs reinforce housing supports, and they deal with the prevention of persons entering homelessness. We also have stressors that can knock people out of the stability that they have in their life. So if homelessness, and specifically literal homelessness, is a dynamic system, then we have to have an approach across our community that addresses it in a dynamic and systemic way. So you see that homelessness depends on the population size, plus the rate of entries and exits over time. It's a stock and flow dynamic. Think of it like a bathtub in your house. If the tap is stuck on, and the bathtub has a limited amount of capacity, and the drain is clogged, what's going to happen in your house? You're going to experience an overflow. And so in addressing the stock and flow of different types of homelessness, we have to approach it with this in mind. Asking the questions, how can we stem the flow of people into housing insecurity or homelessness? How can we address, triage, and abate the people who are already experiencing homelessness in our community, be they chronic individuals, episodic families, veterans, or youth? And we have to ask the larger and harder question about providing housing supports for each of these demographics of homelessness. Anything less, and you will see a glut or a dearth in one or more of those areas. This is why we have to approach this with an end of reaching what the industry calls functional zero, where the system across sector between Macon-Bibb County, our local nonprofits, and anyone engaged in homeless services can respond in such a way that we can affect the way the system provides stable housing. And so one of the things we do, I am not a direct service provider. I work in and with and through multiple nonprofits to try to strategize, analyze, and provide best practices. But we do so with the hope of making sure that homelessness in Macon is brief, rare, and non-reoccurring. And that requires us to create a system across our organizations that is able and agile and effective. And here are the metrics over time that we have to collectively address. One is brevity. When people enter homelessness, the length of time a person or a family experiences homelessness needs to be fewer than the 6-month average of positive exits. Rarity. This is a measure of the number of people entering homelessness over time, where the average length of time from enrollment to stabilization is 45 days or less. We have to track recidivism. It's a measure of the rate of stabilization of a return to homelessness in which no more than 5% of positive exits result in a return to homelessness within 2 years. And it's about equity, ensuring that persons with lived experience of homelessness are engaged in decision-making roles and asset allocation. This forms the basis and the strategy for any community seeking to address homelessness. So here's our approach. These are the values that undergird our strategy in Macon-Bibb. First, this has to be person-centered. We cannot accept any of the assumptions and myths about the homeless and to treat them as a monolithic group, merely a nuisance to our community. We have to honor people's lived experience, not because of what the world has done to them and not because of the decisions they may have made that have resulted in the breaking of their own lives, because we believe deeply that every citizen should be valued. It needs to be data informed, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, making sure that we make decisions about our resources based on actual data. It means adopting a housing first mentality in which the greatest social determinant of health is housing. and ensuring that we are seeking to stabilize persons into housing and safe shelter immediately. It has to be built on community collaboration. There is no way that one entity can solve this for our community alone. We have to be willing to adapt our responses to our present context, and we have to find a way to make it sustainable. So in taking this systems approach, it means that we have to find a way to share data so that we can manage the flow of information about people experiencing homelessness. It means connecting systems of outreach and intake so that we may know the people who are at risk and the people who have entered housing instability. It means providing emergency shelter, which is something this commission and this administration has worked to do since Brookdale was created. Brookdale and Hello House more than doubled our emergency beds for emergent shelter in its creation. An emergency shelter is important. It is one piece of that larger system. We are seeing great success at stabilization of families through Brookdale, through Salvation Army and others, but there is more work to do. It means transitional housing with supportive services so that the flow of people through emergency solutions can stabilize with greater ease. And it means seeking permanent supportive housing options that are available at scale. One of the reasons I'm presenting today is because of the good work that Macon-Bibb County has done in providing some infrastructure. The Show the Way app by Simtech Solutions is a resource that the county has brought to our area as a part of a requested count. This app, along with the sister app from Simtech, Counting Us, provides the infrastructure that our state uses for the annual PIT count and one that we are employing for a routine service count over time. Show the Way, think of it as see, click, fix for homelessness. It has the capacity for our frontline resources, people who have a first touch experience with homeless persons, to share decentralized case management from the field. A way for us to track and treat encampments that exist across our community and the people within them. And also a way to connect our providers' individual case management systems in such a way that we are not siloing our information and resources and thereby duplicating those resources. What we have worked to do over the past year is to pilot aspects of this app. First, with our first responders and our street outreach team, so that when we go out into the field, we use the app in order to track and interview people in real time. We also have used the same framework as a part of our PIT count. This app, as it is further implemented, contains a resource directory of every food pantry, shelter, every nutritional essential service provider in downtown and their hours, so that everyday citizens, along with our service providers, can direct people where they need to go. Its full implementation would allow even our citizens to request help for someone that they meet along the street without revealing sensitive case management data. So here's what we found in the PIT count this year. And I'll add a caveat to this because the data is still pending. Our PIT count data over the course of the past 5 or so years has revealed an undercount of what we have all anecdotally noticed in Macon. Our official PIT count numbers before this year registered about 160 homeless persons split between shelters and street. And what we attempted this year is to really work the street outreach side of the PIT count. The point-in-time count is one night in January where our providers go out and seek to quantify the number of people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness and also to count the people who are experiencing sheltered homelessness in emergency settings. And over the course of the following week, providers interview across our county persons experiencing homelessness, and they capture data. Also making observations as to the number of tents, tarps, and makeshift shelters that we find. That data is then aggregated by DCA and HUD. It is deduplicated, and it is run through an algorithm. That work is still ongoing. Our numbers are raw and have not yet been processed. And so our official numbers will be released by DCA and HUD at a later date. But our result of this pit count shows 275 interviews, 200 observations, and 86 vehicles, tents, tarps, or makeshift shelters across our community, which involves primarily Macon-Bibb, and some of the raw data includes parts of Upper Houston, but that'll be split by geography in the official count. That's for unsheltered. For sheltered, there's approximately 250 sheltered persons on the night of January 21st across Hello House, Brookdale Resource Center, Salvation Army, our DV shelter, and also persons placed in hotels at the expense of a charitable organization. Now, this raw number will come back to us with an official count in the coming days. And there's no way for me to forecast for you when that's going to happen. Here's how the data can inform our work. There are really three main activities that abate homelessness in a community. One is the kind of essential engagement that makes sure that people receive emergency shelter, food, water. This is the work of our drop-in center, Daybreak. It's the work of so many providers that help out. Then there's emergency solutions that we see, like Brookdale Resource Center, Salvation Army, our DV shelter. There's some transitional housing that allows us to quickly place persons into stability. And then, and I think this is the aspect of our strategy that requires the most investment by our community, it's the development of housing resources, supportive and affordable housing like that's curated by River Edge, permanent supportive housing, and we have to engage in the ability to track recidivism. If we are to drive down the metrics of homelessness across each of those demographic areas, this is what the system looks like. It looks like a connected process of engagement where people are accessed, evaluated, and are offered prevention and diversion resources. This is an aspect of our county's resources that needs further investment by providers and developers. It means essential services like our drop-in centers, like transitional housing, like Daybreak, like Brookdale Resource Center. And it means the expansion of housing resources for stabilization, affordable housing, and supportive housing. And so here are our present goals, and then I'll pause for any questions. We are engaged in a cross-sector analysis and redesign of our system at a top level. We are working to coordinate and strengthen crisis response, be it an individual that's dysregulated on Cherry Street or an encampment that's posing a public health or safety concern for its own residents or for the businesses around it. It means evaluating how our resources work with each of those dynamic groups for stabilization pathways that make sense for chronic, episodic, youth, and veteran homelessness. It means a lot of education and advocacy. It means pressing for the development of affordable housing at scale across the housing spectrum. And it means finding ways to fund and sustain the system. And with that, I'll pause for any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Reverend Hall, and thank you for this explanation. We do have a couple of questions, but I will want to make sure that commissioners know that we'll send you this PowerPoint as well. So you have this information in case you want to follow up with Reverend Hall later. But this time, we'll hear from Ms. Valerie Wynn, Commissioner Wynn.
On.
Quit hitting your button, please. There you go.
Well, that's on purpose, isn't it? You did that. Reverend Hall, thank you.
Yes.
Because the mayor was picking at me because I was following Mayor Pro Tem, who was late,
Well, he was picking at me because he didn't want a Baptist minister to go overtime.
That's
There
right.
you go, there
That's
you
right.
go. Thank you for your presentation. I have this is personal opinion. Two groups that I think need our service more than anybody are the youth, and you mentioned that, and the veterans. And the youth specifically, when you're in foster care and you're let out, I say out at 18 to the streets, and you have nowhere to go, you may not have a job because you just got out of high school. And those kids, to me, are just in need of help beyond the age of 18. I mean, I still felt like I was a kid at 20 or 21.
That's right.
You know? So you got to have help for those kids. They don't even know where to go when you put them out on the street after 18. They're in foster care for no reason of their own, no fault of their own, because perhaps poor parenting or no parenting or whatever happened to the parenting situation. They're put in a foster care system that releases them at 18. I don't think we have resources that will help them to don't go, let me just finish all this, okay? Veterans have served our country. They need our support for the rest of their lives if necessary. And sometimes they too come home from service, maybe overseas, and they don't have the education, the knowledge, the technical skills. They don't have family that can help them. They come over here, and that's why they end up on the street. Don't think they meant to be there. Don't think they wanted to be there. Don't think they started out there, but they come home with nowhere to go and nothing to help them. And you talk about resources we have here. We've got a lot of resources, and you mentioned a few of them here, and I think Brookdale number one, but we've got multiple nonprofits, anything from Daybreak to Loaves and Fishes, Salvation Army, churches. We've got churches that help and have a lot of things. There's a lot of duplication of services that if we could unite, we could fight better. Unite and fight is what I call it. Unite those services together, perhaps in a facility like Brookdale that is very large. Put them all there to work together, use the volunteer services, combine resources. We could help a lot more people in one location than spreading them all over town. And some of these places that help them just release them at 5 o'clock to go out and fend for themselves again, find a place to live, find some place to eat. And I just think that a lot of these things are things that we need to work on that will combine those services together. And what do you do when you try to help somebody? Like, I see people every day, if I go that way, in front of Walmart on Zebulon. There's somebody there with a sign almost every day because they need help. And I've pulled over and asked them, what can I do for you? Can I get you help? Can I get Brookdale? Can I get somebody to come get you? They don't want it. They don't want that help. They don't want to go there because there's rules and regulations they don't want to abide by. So what do you do about that? They go back to the street when that happens. I guess I'll hush and let you talk. You've been wanting to say something for quite a while.
I will. I'll address the last part first, and then I'll move back through. One of the most challenging things for any community is dealing with chronic homelessness. Mm-hmm. It's a complex presentation, and there's a lot of trauma that an individual experiencing chronic homelessness has, and that makes it difficult to treat. Studies have shown that investing in housing first resources and finding ways to expedite the process of moving from street to safe shelter and care outside of a graduated shelter experience works. It just requires us to work together deeply. One of the things we've learned over a year of asset mapping and gap analysis is that our community, and Middle Georgia as a whole, needs to bring down every available federal resource to combat this problem. There aren't enough church bake sales for us to solve homelessness. However, there are programs specifically designed for veterans. And I have to brag on some of our providers. VOA does an excellent job of maintaining a by name list of veterans experiencing homelessness. And the VA has incredible resources. Salvation Army has a program dedicated to veterans. Does the program need additional resources in coordination? Of course it does. United Way is piloting a grant through DCA from HUD based on youth homelessness called YHDP, Youth Homeless Demonstration Project, that pilots a small number of transitional housing beds specifically for youth 18 to 24 who are head of their own household. It's exactly what you're talking about. Programs like that, we need to go after those dollars and implement that infrastructure across our provider network. And there are ways for us to specifically address those types and demographics of homelessness with the kind of discrete care that we need. Mayor Pro Tem, could you bring me a water? Thank you.
Let me just say that I know that this community has just completed building a very lovely facility down by Carolyn Creighton Park behind Daybreak. It's an apartment complex. I know that some of that's going to be dedicated, I think, to homeless people and low income. I'm not.
A portion.
I think a portion of that should be for veterans, and I think a portion of that should be for these youth that I'm talking about, 18 to 24 that you just mentioned, because that's who really needs some help to find things, to find help where to live, how to. I know that Brookdale helps with things like helping find a job, and maybe transportation and finding permanent housing too. I just think everything ought to be in one place instead of spreading all these resources around. Use these resources we have and put them in Brookdale. Have the churches donate their volunteers and their money into Brookdale, and you can have one of the halls and dedicate it to Daybreak if you want to, or dedicate it to Loaves and Fishes if you want.
Well, and here's, let me speak to that. Here's the truth. We do not have the capacity at any one organization at present to fully deal with homelessness.
You mean one organization or one facility, one location?
All of the above. It requires a unified approach that is decentralized across organizations. I agree, we absolutely need to combat the kind of overlapping of services that we see, and there is some of that, especially related to feeding or essential services. But if we can connect these programs using a data-informed approach where case management is shared and prioritized and housing resources are available to expand the kind of work that Macon-Bibb Economic Opportunities Council does. Macon-Bibb EOC serves as the lead agency for our area for coordinated entry into homeless services. If we support and expand that kind of work, there's a way for us to connect these entities and even our private nonprofits as well, using implementations like the Semtech solutions.
Well, I know all these people here today, and all of us would love to see no homeless people on the streets of Macon-Bibb County. We'd love to have them in a facility where they can live comfortably and have food to eat and maybe find them a job. But we've got to work together. It's sad to see that out there. Sad to see so many of them, and then sometimes when you stop the help, they don't want the help, from an individual like me. But I think I want you to be in charge of getting rid of these duplication of services and combining them. And like you said, they're out there, so we can do some of that. Maybe we can put some funds together or resources together and volunteers together so that it'll work better for us.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Well, we got a couple more questions, but I will say that this United in Homelessness, the name itself speaks to what you're talking about, and we have seen a lot of duplication of services in the past that have actually worked together now, and I think it's coming along. You look at the ones they've placed, it's all going to be under one roof there with multiple agencies working together. Brookdale is not the end-all be-all for everything, and we don't claim to be, and of course you got to make sure that's properly funded each and every year, and we'll talk about that at a later date. But it's this type of organization and the great work that Jake's doing there in his role at United Way and just on his own to coordinate efforts to make sure that all the people that need to be in the room are in the same room, moving in the same direction. But we also, we don't have a cookie cutter situation when it comes to those experiencing homelessness. And what may work or be the specialty at one place may not be the specialty at other. And it's a very fluid situation. Like at one point in time, we may have all single women or men and children at Brookdale. The next time may be over a period of time, if we address that, may be all single men that may need to have, or veterans. So we have to kind of move with the situation. But we got a couple more questions here. Commissioner Bailey, you had your light on.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for that data analysis.
If you don't mind moving that microphone down a little bit, Ms. Bailey. Don't hit your button. Yeah.
Okay, and thank you for that data analysis. I'm very impressed with that Show the Way app plus the sister app under Simotech. Can you tell us a little bit more about that solution and how the public can actually access that when we do come across people that are homeless, that are asking us for services?
Sure. Well, in like manner to NBC Alert or to See-Click-Fix, once it is properly rolled out, there is a public component to this app where if you meet someone, and Commissioner Wynn, you mentioned if you're at the Zebulon Road Walmart and you're talking to someone, that you can collect their information as a part of that exchange and share it with the people that need it. And so that moment, that person has access to a larger system of support. They are now on the radar of a collection of service providers once the app is fully implemented. At present, we are at the pilot and beta testing phase, where we're mainly working with Macon-Bibb County departments and also a few of our providers to ensure that the app is fully functional, and also to move our PIT data over into it and to further collect data for our area. But it has the functionality that's very similar to See-Click-Fix or Macon-Bibb County Alert, in that anyone can input information. Not everyone can see information. It has a tiered and layered support system for providers who need access to case management data. It also has, and the more powerful aspects of the framework are really those that are unseen, the ability to share data across provider is extremely important for us to collect the whole picture. At present, our providers, our Macon-Bibb County Public Service Resources and others, each maintain separate systems for case management. We only see in part that way. Over time, we have the ability to connect to, through APIs and other data sharing arrangements, so that if you enter one site for services, it's captured. It's a way to supplement and augment the homeless management information system that the state runs alongside the case management systems that our providers have. And I think that's the only way for us to have a picture of what homelessness really looks like for our region.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Thank you, Reverend Hall. Commissioner Bronson, you're next.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Good seeing you again. First and foremost, thank you for the presentation. Out of curiosity, I have three quick questions. One, dealing with the veterans. As a current member of the military myself, have we looked at possibly tag teaming with the units that we have here? Currently, the 40th Brigade National Guard unit, the Army Reserve Center, and I want to say the 642nd, that's in the Decatur area that does similar work. Have we looked at partnering with them to see what we can do about gaining that state and federal funding to push this across the board? One being kind of dealing with the stigma for service members to get help, right? We deal with that on a regular basis. And then two, for those soldiers that are coming back home, they're fighting the unseen battle, right, in the mind. And a lot of times we don't really talk about that. But what is some discussion that can be had on that, or what are some things we can do to kind of bridge that partnership between the organizations?
First, I want to celebrate the ongoing work of the VA and Carl Vinson in this area, and also our homeless coalition, many of whom our providers are deeply connected to the veteran community, including VOA, Salvation Army, and others. There is always more work that can happen around collaboration and information. That's just the nature of cross-sector work. And so I think continuing that effort is a good one. And the engagement of those active deployment resources that you mentioned, I think is a great idea.
Okay. I know we have units that are currently deployed and on a rotation to deploy. So I guess from our standpoint, identifying those units that are coming back ahead of time and being there to kind of offer those services for our service members, men and women that are coming back for our particular city and area. Outside of that, when we start talking about food services, I myself have been in contact with Starbucks a lot, and then of course SNS. But we get asked a lot of times from service personnel here, food services throughout, say, hey, listen, we have food that we have to get. We got to throw away. Can we provide it to you guys and so forth? I know there's a slight legal concern in that. Have we looked at possibly bridging that gap between food services that are here to provide those resources that they don't need in a sense?
I can let Michael speak to any sort of public health issues related to that, but there are problems in taking food that is not fit for sale from restaurants or places and then giving it away. There's some issues there.
Okay.
The best thing we can do is invest in ways like the garden has supplemented Brookdale. Here we've created a renewable resource that costs sweat equity, that has driven down prices per meal to something that's truly manageable. I think that is a wonderful partnership. It's hard to outdo the work of the Middle Georgia Food Bank, really, where food at scale is what they do and what they do well. And also our essential service providers, many of whom are here today, whose work begins when insecurity starts, and they are the people with the net preventing people from falling into homelessness. And you'll hear about their work in a moment. I think those services certainly need shoring up, always. But I think in terms of literal homelessness, making sure that we connect these essential services and reduce duplication and focus every single provider in the area of literal homelessness to a housing solution.
Okay.
That's key. If we provide essential services, but do not provide an off-ramp into stable housing, then we will never, ever affect the metrics of homelessness for our region. And so we have to wed the provenance of essential services, the good and charitable work of making sure that people are fed, safely sheltered, with some kind of permanency related to the type of homelessness the person is experiencing, especially chronic homelessness that has many co-located issues. And if we don't do that, then we're not going to affect that aspect of homelessness.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to yield on my last question because you've already answered it. I know that we deal with it a lot within the district, mainly Spring Street, areas of downtown and so forth. So I want to make sure that businesses and different organizations that are providing services have that opportunity to support this initiative. I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to pushing it forward as much as possible. And thank you all the service personnel that are out there today for the work that you're doing too as well. So thank you.
Brief comment on that, Commissioner Bronson. One of the things we do is serve as a kind of nexus point across the sector. And so we work deeply with Eisenhower BID and also the downtown bid, direct connections with business owners downtown to try to listen and to address any issues systemically. And that's a part of strengthening our crisis response, both for individuals and for encampments. We work with a holistic team to address things like encampments, their density, the public safety issues that are inherent to life outside, and also to address any dangers or law enforcement concerns related to that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Bronson. Commissioner Walker?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for your presentation, very thorough. It gives us a lot of insight on a lot of different angles we're looking at here. One thing I would like to ask and really hadn't heard much about, we know they're the ones that may be similar to Walmart that don't want any help. There are people at off-ramps, various places all around our city that don't not only want help, but probably don't need it because they only want to collect cash and move on. Do we have any way to track any of those?
Well, I've interviewed a number of people who are engaged in that kind of aggressive panhandling, and the interview never really goes very far. I think what you're describing is a kind of organized and aggressive panhandling that's very different from the kind of chronic homelessness that we see around downtown, a kind of maybe occasional panhandling. And I think that's an issue that's complex, and honestly, it's a law enforcement issue. Uh, it's more than just a single person, you know, reaching out for a need. We see and conjecture that this may be an organized system in some areas, and it's very difficult to track that. Those are moments where I defer to our law enforcement, code enforcement colleagues.
Thank you, Commissioner Water. I think that's a lot of times what people see traveling through the interstates on exit there. We've done a fairly good job of addressing that issue during the day, mainly through code enforcement because, you know, sheriff is generally busy, but they do assist when necessary. But I think it gets to be a pattern. So 9 to 5, you don't see them there at 5:30. You start seeing them there, and certainly when they know that we're not there in the evenings and the weekends, and that's something that may have to change as far as
Right.
what we may need to do, reallocate resources. So Commissioner Bronson had a follow-up question?
I'm sorry about that. So two questions in a sense. One is in regards to I'm gonna call it the camp app. Is there a way for us to track, and I'm pretty sure there is, where you have what personnel are from the city of Macon and those that are coming from outside? Is there a way for us to track that piece of it, or is that part of the mechanism that's already in place?
Let's see if I understand your question. You're asking if we can track whether the person is indigenous to Macon or all of our service providers, including the state's HMIS system, tracks kind of location and origin stuff. And so that information is out there, and it's certainly a piece of this. And our individual service providers also track where someone is coming from. And you know, generally what we've learned from that is some people get stuck in Macon. We're a waypoint. Some people get sent to Macon. We're a target at times. Not in some large maniacal way. Nobody's coming here from the border. I get asked that question a lot. But just like Macon has a magnetism for arts, culture, and healthcare, you know, if you're homeless and you lack resources in the contiguous counties, where are you going to go to survive? You know,
Yeah.
and so it's not so much a conspiracy as a natural aspect of being a city of a certain size.
Yes, sir. And then lastly, are there any aggressive housing first solutions that are in place?
Oh, yes. Listen, this is something that you all are engaged in presently. The Affordable Housing Fund is an extremely effective tool to develop the kind of housing we're talking about, be it transitional housing or permanent supportive housing, depending how those units are established. The Macon Housing Authority is an extremely valuable tool in abating this. And unlike some housing authorities nationally, ours has a preference for veterans and literally homeless people that allows access for the most vulnerable. And so to celebrate the work of Mike Alston and his team and also their development efforts, I would be remiss if I didn't note that as well. But also the way that Land Bank, Macon-Bibb County, Macon Housing Authority, our providers and developers are working together to establish more units. That's something that every nonprofit needs to consider at any scale.
Thank you, Jake. And I think we'll have a larger conversation on the housing piece at a later date, but that's certainly a good lead into that. So appreciate you for being here today. Appreciate you answering those questions. We will send out that the PowerPoint to all the commissioners, and if they have follow-up questions, they can get with you. Commissioner Lucas, you had a question?
I just could not let y'all leave without expressing my personal gratitude to all of you for the work that you've done. Over the years, we have seen a kind of a scattered effort at this, but I just want to salute you for all of you who work in this area because it's making a difference. It really does. It doesn't seem like it sometimes, but it is making a difference. And I would encourage this commission to continue with these updates because things that you don't pay attention to or bring forward for public discussion or display or whatever, sometimes they'll get lost. So I would just encourage that continued update on this issue, but thank you all.
Thank you for the
Commissioner.
invitation today. And while it's me standing here offering this update, I represent a number of providers whose good work also needs to be named and noted, including our Homeless Coalition, our prevention and diversion providers, our emergency providers, the Good Samaritans that operate food pantries, whose work is often unnamed, down to the developers who, we often describe as in it for the capital, are also in it for the compassion as well. And so it takes a very broad effort to affect this issue. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Reverend Hall. Appreciate the good work. So this time, we're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda. This is the CDBG fiscal 2025 budget. This is an ordinance of the Macon-Bibb County Commission to adopt the Economic and Community Development Department, ESG, Home and CDBG proposed budget for fiscal year 2025. And in that respect, we'd like to ask Ms. Wanzina Jackson to come forward. Ms. Jackson, thank you for being here today and waiting so patiently, and all the folks that are in attendance with you. We appreciate them remaining here as well as it all ties together. So at this time, we'll turn that over to you. If you don't mind stating your name and your title for the people at home that may not know you.
Good morning. I'm Wanzina Jackson. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development for Macon-Bibb County. Today, the presentation that we have, we will be talking about funds that are provided to Macon-Bibb County through the grant allocation, as far as the formula grant through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Today, we'll talk about the purpose with regards to economic and community development. These funds that we receive are administered, these funds that are received by the county are actually administered by Macon-Bibb County's Economic and Community Development Department. The purpose of the funds are to provide services to low to moderate income individuals within Macon and Bibb County. And as a part of that we have 3 main categories that we look at with regards to housing, as well as social services, and then also economic development. The funding sources that we'll talk about today will be the Emergency Solutions Grant Funds, the Home Investment Partnership Funds, as well as Community Development Block Grant Funds. We'll start off with the Emergency Solutions Grant Funds. With these particular funds, in 2009, the HEARTH Act actually updated that particular funding source, and it moved from the centralization of really trying to focus on the emergency shelter portion and the transitional housing, to looking at a more stabilization as far as permanent housing for those individuals that are at risk of homeless or truly considered to be homeless with regards to the definition of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. In this particular funding source, the categories that they look at as far as the 5 components that fall up under this funding source are emergency shelter, street outreach, homeless prevention, as well as rapid rehousing, and then the homeless information system. This is a system that is required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. For this year, the amount that we are proposed to receive as far as Macon-Bibb County is $160,426. Of those funds, we are looking at emergency shelter that we would provide approximately $48,395. For homeless prevention, $60,000. Rapid rehousing, $10,000, and for street outreach, $30,000, for a total of that $160,426. So that is the proposed budget for the amount that we anticipate on receiving from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Again, these are formula grants. Normally what we do is, because unfortunately the need is greater than the funding that we do have available, is that we take applications for each funding source that we actually receive. For the next one, we'll talk about, it will be the Home Investment Partnership Program. With the Home Investment Partnership Program, these particular funds are provided to provide affordable housing opportunities for low to moderate income individuals within Macon-Bibb County. As a part of this particular funding source, this could be rental housing, as well as it could be home ownership opportunities for low to moderate income individuals. And when taken into consideration that the actual graph that shows who falls into those categories as far as low to moderate income are updated on an annual basis by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This year, the amount that is proposed with regards to the Department of Housing and Urban Development is $806,886. As a part as $868, I apologize. And then we also anticipate for some projects that we have done over the years that we will receive approximately $125,000. And then with this particular funding source, there is a match requirement that we must provide non-federal funds in the amount of 25%, but because of our particular jurisdiction, over the years, it has been reduced to either a 50% or either 100%. So we anticipate that it will possibly be reduced to 12.5% this particular year, 12.25. So with this particular funding source, that we do anticipate that we will spend approximately $718,510 with regard to developer projects. Again, these are affordable housing projects that actually would deal with either rental opportunities as well as home ownership opportunities. We also look at the community housing development organizations. These are considered to be CHODOs. The amount toward those particular organizations would be $121,000, $30,000. And then we also look at down payment assistance. Again, these will be for low to moderate income individuals that are looking at home ownership opportunities within our community. For the next funding source, these would be the Community Development Block Grant Funds. With Community Development Block Grant Funds, these funds are, we receive applications for this one as well as the home and the ESG. For this particular one, we can provide suitable living environment as far as different social service type activities, as well as looking at infrastructure activities with regards to our community, and then also economic development opportunities for low to moderate income individuals. The amount that we anticipate on receiving with regards to community development entitlement funds will be $1,842,545. Of this, we anticipate that we will possibly receive approximately $85,000 based upon prior year of programs that have actually been done. And then also for general funds, $17,450. With regards to this particular funding source, we look at $402,959 that will go toward the administration of the program. We also look at the redevelopment activities as far as the program is concerned of $553,141. For our economic development and small business opportunities, $20,000. With regards to rehabilitation program, $451,187. For public facilities, infrastructure, and acquisition, $42,910. And for our volunteer programs, these are applications that have been received that would be from minor home repair, rebuilding Macon, $141,000, and then rebuilding Macon as far as volunteer youth, $60,000. These are minor home repair opportunities that are provided to low to moderate income individuals, as well as the seniors, as well as those that have disabilities. And then with regards to the public service, that was $273,798. That public service is broken down to these agencies that have applied to us and that we are recommending for funding as a part of this particular funding source. It would be Big Brother, Big Sisters, $53,077. Also, Crisis Line and Safe House, $49,800. $87. Then we also look at Family Advancement Ministries, $10,140. We have Family Counseling Center, which would be $43,200. We have Home First, that's $84,700. And then we also have the Mentors Project of Bibb County, that's $12,400. And then we have Mother's Nest Incorporated, which is $20,394 that we will be looking at as far as recommendations this year. Also, I mentioned previously with regard to the volunteer program, this is for minor home repair. It would be 60,000. Then for our rebuilding Macon, as far as the minor home repair, it would be 141,000. So with the youth programs, that one's primarily done in the summer, and then the minor home repair is done over the year with regards to these particular programs. This year, we do not have any agencies that submitted to us that are not being recommended with regards to funding. So this year, even though they may not have received full funding, that all applications that were submitted to us, they will receive some funding with regards to this particular funding source.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. At this time, I'll hear from Commissioner Lucas.
Thank you. Just want to remind everybody why we get these funds. These are actually our funds that just happen to come from the federal government. And I know over the years, since what,
1974 is when we started receiving community
74,
development
yeah,
block grant funds, and then the other
yeah.
programs after that.
And we have been very fortunate to receive these allocations, and it just seems like that the needs of the community just, they keep, there's a distance, there's a disconnect some kind of way, because our stats in Macon-Bibb County are improving slightly in some areas, but we're still seeing a lot of areas where there's a need. So I commend you for addressing those needs. I did want to ask you about one particular organization that I met the executive director of the Boy Scouts a few weeks ago, and I believe that this person, Mr. Garrett Williams, might have made contact with mayor's office or somebody. Anyway, I was wondering if you had received any kind of inquiry from the Boy Scouts. I understand that they're having a lot of difficulty in maintaining the, I had forgotten where the Boy Scouts office was located, right there at Bogey Boulevard, that exit. But I did go out to visit, my husband and I did, and they expressed the concerns that they have. I wanted to ask you if they are eligible, first of all, and they may not be. And if there's any doubt, would you explore maybe a connection with Mr. Williams? Because I think there's a real need there, and they do still provide services to an awful lot of young people. So I know that's a statement, but it was a question too.
Yes, ma'am. We are actually very aware with regards to that organization, so thank you for bringing that forth. They have received funds from us in the past. They did not apply this particular year, so they have actually applied previously with regards to provide the Boy Scout programs to individuals that are in low to moderate income locations. They just did not apply this year.
Okay, well, they seem to be in dire straits. And I would be curious to know why they did not apply, especially, and I do remember that they were funded previously. You have mid-year presentation as well. Now, would
Yes,
they?
ma'am. Normally what happens is that with the mid-year presentation, if we have any agencies that do not accept the funds that we are proposing at this particular time, or if there's an agency that does not spend all those funds, then we will come back to you with regards to that reallocation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how much is left in that particular category? Because I know you have three different categories there, so how much do you have left in that category now, or is it all allocated?
In that particular category, it would be approximately $15,000.
Okay, so that, I don't know, any amount helps, and maybe it could be targeted to a specific program. I know the Boy Scouts cover, this particular one covers, what, 10, 12 counties, with Bibb County making up the largest area. But I do think, in light of what I heard from them, that it would be a good gesture for us to maybe try and work with them. That's just a suggestion. And I will communicate with Mr. Williams to make contact with you and with the mayor's office. Yeah.
We've spoken.
Yeah, to inquire about any specific programs that might be eligible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Wynn, we'll hear from you.
Yes, Ms. Jackson, you know I can't let you get away without asking a question or two. First, I want to say this to you, that I appreciate what you do for this community. You have a critical role in our community, and you do a great job with it, and I want to thank you for that, first of all. Secondly, just want to ask a little question. On the street outreach program, I think you had $30,000 allotted for that. Who handles that, and what is it? How does it work?
So these would be applications that would come to us. Currently, we do have a application with First Choice that is actually providing that street outreach component at this particular time. They applied last year with regards to some funds that we had, and we brought that contract to you. So they are the ones that are currently doing that. But it may be other agencies in the future that may actually apply for that particular amount of funds.
So this is not going out to the street and asking people, helping people on the street then?
So with regards to street outreach, it does provide services because you do have individuals that may come into our community or that may be a part of the recently homeless that may or may not know what services are provided. So as a part of that street outreach, there is a case management component that refers people to different agencies as well as provide resources.
So you have a specific department or somebody that handles that when that happens?
So the agency that has actually provided, that has requested funds at this particular time and are providing that is First Choice Primary Care. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioners, this does require a vote today. So this time I'd entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Clark, second by Commissioner Lucas. And I think everybody will join in on the motion, so we appreciate that. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. This motion carries unanimously. Be sent to consent agenda next Tuesday. If I'll ask all the people that are here with Ms. Jackson today that support all these initiatives to please stand up so we can recognize you. Appreciate you being here today and appreciate all the work that you continue to do in our community. We appreciate your partnership on this right here today and what you do each and every day that we don't see out front, but we know you're working hard behind the scenes. So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our items on the agenda today. We do have a need to go into executive session. We will exit the executive session and we'll adjourn the meeting for executive session. When we complete our business, we will not be coming back out front here, and there will be no items to vote on coming out of executive session today, just to let the public know so you don't stay out here waiting for us to return. This is executive session. The motion to go into executive session for consultation with the county attorneys or other legal counsel to discuss pending or potential litigation, settlement claims, administrative proceedings, and other judicial actions brought to it by or against the county. At this time, I entertain a motion to go into executive session. Commissioner Bronson makes that motion. Can I get a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem Clark and Ms. Bailey. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. We're now in executive session.